Alrighty. Hello, everybody. How are you doing this morning?
Great.
Good. Awesome. This is my mother. She is visually impaired. She has retinitis pigmentosa. To get an idea of what that is, it's tunnel vision, slow degeneration of the eye. If you put your hands like this on your face and you, like little binoculars, everybody could do that now, please and thank you. I like these kinds of activities, and then just close them down until they're like a little pinhole. That's about what she sees. So you can imagine just going through life with that. She's diagnosed when, what, you're 35-ish?
No, 30.
30? Cool. And then kind of went downhill from there. She's had extensive experience with the CNIB. I think you did some fundraising for them at some point as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, years ago, before I was blind, actually, before I knew I was going blind. So.
And from there, she has taken it in stride. She's working on a book right now, discussing her impairments and some of the things that surround that, and some of the things that affect especially orphan diseases in general. And she's traveled around the world, interviewed lots of people in lots of different countries about how they deal with people with impairments and what some of the accessibility issues are surrounding that. And she's here talking to you today about all that stuff. So this is Jillian Davis, my mother. Here I
am. Well, thank you for coming, everybody that's actually here, and those that are on the Skype call, or pardon me, Zoom call as well. I'm hoping I can make this interesting for you, because this is one of my passion projects. I like to inform people about what's really going on in the blind community, and what you guys are doing is fantastic. The fundraising that you're doing is greatly appreciated, and I want to make sure that you really know that it is definitely needed and definitely appreciated. Okay, so this morning I'm talking about the benefits of the CNIB to the blind community. It is a huge benefit to us right from word go. So we'll get stuck in here. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was hoping to get volunteers, so if somebody would like to read the quote there for us, go right ahead.
So character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved.
And the reason that I brought that up was because a lot of the people who wind up experiencing something like a degenerative eye disease, they wind up finding out that the first part of it is extremely hard, but eventually what happens is that you start to become a better person, and that's the whole thing. The more trials you go through, it's like being honed into a better individual. And there's one fella that I know with RP who, as he started going blind, he started writing poetry. And he now is one of the great exemplars of the blind community, because he's really connecting with people and helping them to express their feelings about going blind. So it's really fantastic. His name is Dave Steele, and he is known as the blind poet now, and even does like a weekly Zoom chat with people just to make sure that we're connecting and being able to sort of pass notes back and forth, so to speak, so that we can get better, be able to deal with life better through our experiences and sharing those experiences. So these are some of my adventures, just a few pictures. The first one is me on the top of the hill. It was after a 3-hour hike. The girl I actually went and did that hike with, it's just a few months later, she climbed Everest, so I was in very good hands. And in the UK, I think this is classified as a mountain. We live in Alberta. We have Rockies. Those are mountains. What they call mountains in the UK are like hills. I don't know. But on the top of a lot of these hills or mountains, you have these sort of concrete pillars, and to get up to the top of them and do your, Captain Morgan stance is like the big thing. A lot of people like to do that. So my friend made me do it as well. Directly across is me with my knight in shining armor. He let me hold his sword, which was pretty cool. That sucker's heavy. And that was in front of the Summer Palace in Warsaw, Poland. Now, all of those trips I did on my own. I didn't have a guide. I had friends that I met along the way, but I did a lot of traveling on my own, and the reason for doing that was to show what blind people can achieve on their own. So that was just some of the travels, and the one in the middle which really annoys me because it was the one time in most of that climb that I wasn't actually smiling. That was whenever I climbed the CN Tower last April. It's 1,776 steps, although there's like another little bit of stairs that you have to go up to get to the, I guess it's like the viewing platform. And those stairs aren't counted, and there was people ahead of me and behind me that were complaining about that at that time, and I think that was the moment where I'm going, oh come on, let's just get to the top. So the one time I wasn't smiling, and that's whenever they took the picture. Great. But that is an exhilarating experience, and I highly recommend it for anyone. But again, it was part of my goals to try to show what blind people can do, what they can achieve. So, and we can do anything anybody else can do. Let's see here. Okay, so with the, I think it's the program that you guys are doing, you've got two with the CNIB.
Yeah.
One of them is the 5 pillars of what the CNIB does generally, and then there's the guide dog sort of separated out. So I'm going to speak mostly on the 5 pillars, and the first one is live, which is the daily living skills, and this is me in Łódź, Poland, learning how to cook authentic Indian food, not Polish food, but authentic Indian food, because the girl that was hosting me there, she was from India and was working in Łódź. So, and Łódź is spelled strangely, it's L-O-D-Z, but it's pronounced Łódź in Polish, so it's a kind of a cool place. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do with you guys is kind of an active participation thing. So I want you to put your hands out and just do like jazz hands and go back as far as you can see. So is that as far as you can go? You can't see them you just can't see them anymore, right? Okay, that is what a blind person sees. What you're seeing with your hands now is what a blind person sees. They just don't see. It's not that it's dark. It's the same as what you'd see out the back of your head. You just don't see. So it's not dark, it's not black, it's none of that, it's just not there. So that was something I wanted to do just so that you can kind of contextualize what it is. Now, most blind people, like myself, have central vision. Mine is not as bad as Sean tried to say. I do have like about here, it's about there. So I have it slightly wider than what he said, but I also have sort of blurry vision in the center, patches where it's really clear, patches where it's blurry, and patches where it's just not there. So words will disappear on a page for me, so reading things can sometimes take a lot longer. I used to read voraciously, I still technically do, but I use recorded books now. And it's just because words will disappear, so where it would take me like 2 minutes to read a 5-page thing, now it's taking me like half an hour to an hour, so it can be really frustrating. And you don't even realize it at times. It'll just be like, shouldn't there have been a word there? Oh yeah, okay. So that's basically what we're facing. And so of course, as you can imagine, mobility is a huge thing, and that's the first thing that I wanted to cover. Something that a lot of people don't know, and you could even use this whenever you're going door to door, whether you're doing the guide dogs or whether you're doing the 5 pillars, is that before you can get a guide dog, you have to have mobility training with the cane. So this is my cane. I like to call him Charlie. I have a friend that calls hers Sir Lancelot. Basically, mobility is so important. It's like a fundamental. So whenever I was first diagnosed, I was sent to the CNIB for an assessment. They immediately gave me a cane. Now there's different kinds of canes. One of them is just a very light white stick that doesn't have any ball or anything, or the tips are all different. I use a big ball because I walk fast and I go over a lot of different types of terrains. So I need something that's going to go over easily. So I use this big ball, but there's smaller ones. There's like ones they call marshmallows and smaller tips. But with a small ID cane, it doesn't have a tip. It's just one white cane that is just to identify to other people that you don't see very well. You don't need it for feeling the ground or anything else. What a cane like this is for actually feeling the ground. So I'm using this to feel where curbs are, where little signs are, the little sandwich board signs and that kind of thing. In this city, oh my goodness, it is like necessary, like you wouldn't believe. It is a challenge getting anywhere, because there's so much construction and those scooters and stuff, it's just crazy. And so you're trained right away with how to use one of these suckers. You need to know how to do it before you can get a guide dog. So that fundamental mobility training with the cane is absolutely paramount for someone with visual impairments. No questions asked. And the cane, a lot of people don't know, these guys fold up pretty easily. They've got an elastic band in them, so they're handy. You can travel with them to just about everywhere. Now, one of the problems with the CNIB is there are just not enough mobility trainers. So getting more funding so that there's more people that can go out is hugely, hugely beneficial for us. Just a quick story, I went back to university in 2011 and I couldn't get a mobility trainer in time for me to start classes, so I had to go early, figure it out myself. So that was pretty frustrating. And that seems to be a fairly common plea with people, is that there's just not enough people that can go out, because you have to get them to go out to your environment. A lot of our mobility trainers in the CNIB are traveling up north, so they're going to be gone for 2 or 3 days up north or down south, or like in those outlying areas, because they have to come to you wherever you happen to be, because you have to be trained in your own environment. So and that's so that you can negotiate your own environment. And in fact, now I don't know how it works here because I haven't interviewed anybody here about it, but guide dogs in Northern Ireland, which is the UK Guide Dogs program, you're only allowed to, or you're only trained for something like 8 different paths that you might take. So you have to be very routine in everything that you do. With a cane, that's the other beautiful part about having a cane, is that you can go everywhere and it doesn't have to be as routine. So, but at the same time, you have to know those basic negotiation kind of things, like how do you negotiate traffic in your area? How do you negotiate, like, where are you going to go for groceries and what have you? Because you don't know unless somebody shows you initially, and you don't know what the obstacles are going to be until somebody trains you on those things. So that mobility, I can't stress it enough. We need more people who are doing that because it is so vital. Let's see here. Communications, that's another thing that the CNIB helps with. They help to bring people together so that we can talk to each other about what we're going through, kind of exchange notes and figure out, this thing works for me, how are you doing this, that kind of thing. So they do have different programs where people can connect with each other and talk about these things. They also teach Braille. There's the CNIB library, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. But there's a lot of different things where they're helping the blind to communicate, because obviously, like, we can't, for example, if you send us a letter, we can't see it unless we have technology and stuff to help us do that. Like, just to pick up a piece of paper it's just dark marks on a page, that's all we're going to see. So having access to communication is huge, and the different forms of communication. And basic daily life skills is another big one. How do you cut an onion? I mean, I never wear nail polish, but one of the first things that came to my mind was, how do I paint my nails if I, suddenly have the urge to? So all of those things that we take for granted as being fully visual, all of a sudden those things become a concern, and it's the CNIB that teaches people how to do those things, how to basically life in their own home, so and out in the world as well. So let's see here, the next one, play, recreation. This is me again. I think that one, yeah, I'm in Krakow. And that's a little bit of graffiti. I love graffiti. I think it's one of the last pure art forms that there is. And this place where I am, on the one side is this thing called Silva Mural, and it is basically the whole history of Poland painted on a wall. Absolutely beautiful art. And then this, where I am, it's sort of a pathway that goes up one side of it, because Silva Mural is right on the other side of that wall, but it's on a really busy road. So you have to come up this pathway and across a bridge so that you can actually stand and see it. And that whole pathway is all this absolutely incredible graffiti. So it's my idea of play and fun. So, the social support. What the CNIB, again, it brings other blind people together in a community so that we can talk to each other and compare notes. There's also different social activities that they provide. One of the things that I did was I took a public speaking course. They also have like things where you can learn how to do yoga, or I don't know, knit. There's card playing groups that get together. There's all kinds of things. So having that social support with people who are using the same kind of technology as you are. So for example, braille cards and things, it just is really, really helpful. And then hobbies and interests, again, there's a whole bunch of different things that people like to do, and the more that you can keep doing as your sight deteriorates, so that it's as close to what your life was like before, super important. It's just a way of keeping some kind of normality in your life as you go through these things. And sports and fitness, now I put up there Blind Sport Northern Ireland. It's actually Disability Sport Northern Ireland. They have an amazing program that I would love to bring here, and it comes close to paying for itself. What they do is sort of a team building thing, like corporate team building, which is hugely popular. And they do a day program where people get to experience different disabilities while they team build. So they play sports as disabled people. But it's a great opportunity for people to really understand what the disabled are going through and see that, you know, once you figure it out, it's not that hard to continue on with life as anybody else does. So those things are really important as well that the CNIB provides. Work and career, one of my favorite topics. The stats for people with disabilities, and generally they lump all of the disabilities together, so I can only explain from disabled, not specifically from blind. But the stats for disabled workers are, there's something like a 70%, and this is before COVID, there was a 70% unemployment rate within the disabled community. So considering that I believe the highest rate of unemployment during the Great Depression was 19%, and currently in Alberta, I'm not sure if it's Alberta or just Calgary, it's 20%, which is absolutely horrendous. 70% in the disabled community before COVID, imagine what it is now. You have a lot of people that are going after the same jobs. It doesn't matter what your qualifications are, how much experience you have or anything else. Somebody is going to hire somebody that they don't have to worry about, rather than somebody that might need tech and what have you to do the job. So it is pretty grim out there, and there's a lot of very capable people who just can't get work. And so the CNIB does try to, they're sort of going out, I know they have one of the programs where they're kind of liaisoning between the work, like different companies, and the blind community, trying to match people up to jobs and trying to explain that, you know, it just takes a little bit of tech generally and people can do the same job. Another interesting fun fact, to me anyway, is that disabled employees also have been shown to be the most loyal employees, and part of that is 70% unemployment rate. Once you have a job, you're not going anywhere. You're going to hold on to that. And quite often, strange enough, the disabled community actually take less sick days than the able-bodied community. So those are all interesting little facts and things that we need to be able to communicate to businesses, and the CNIB is instrumental in doing that. High and low tech, I'll get into that more later, but the high and low tech are the things that help us to do the job. It's like having a cane, it's having magnifiers, it's having other pieces of technology to help us to do exactly the same job. And skill training, again, the CNIB, we get our tech through the CNIB, generally speaking, and they will also train us on how to use it. So those things are really important offerings from the CNIB. And learn is the next one. So let's see here. Basic skills. So again, we're going to talk about communication and how people who are blind communicate. Verbally, obviously, because I'm yakking up a storm and love to do that, so, you know, that's not a problem. But being able to read material is not going to happen for most of us once we get to a certain stage in the deterioration, in my case, or if you're born completely blind. So you're looking at audio, you're looking at sometimes large print, and oftentimes you're looking at Braille as well. The CNIB takes care of all of those things. So any government forms that you might get, so to fill out tax forms and what have you, you can get those in those different formats so that you can do your own taxes just like everybody else. Yay. No excuses, unfortunately. And a lot of that stuff, it's done through, the CNIB has a specific library, and that library is called CELA, for short, it's CELA. And that library does a lot of that converting, whatever it is that has to get to the citizen of Canada, they will convert that into whatever format the blind person needs. The same thing goes with textbooks. So for people who are going to university or just high school, whatever, they're the ones that are going to convert all of that material into whatever form the blind person needs, whether it's Braille or whatever. They also teach Braille skills, so that is a fundamental as well. For people who can't see, one of the best ways of just being able to enjoy a book is to learn Braille. I still am in the process of learning it because I don't have sensitive fingers, and it makes it really hard. But they teach you all of those things. So again, it's just this fundamental resource for people who can't see. They do everything to make us able to life. I love that word. I think it was the millennials that came up with it, but anyway, and it's a good one. So a little bit more about the library and the media that it provides. CELA does, first of all, one of my favorite things, I'm a huge movie fan, and they actually do, descriptive video. So descriptive video, one of the things that they're actually working on is something called embedded descriptive video. So they'll take like a regular story that you would put to film, and they would embed things like you walk into a store, and as they're explaining on, say, AMI, which is like the media, Accessible Media Incorporated, you'll find that on your TVs. And what they do is they have stuff for people who have sensory disabilities. And so you walk into a store, and instead of just walking into the store and letting people see it, what they'll do is, as you walk in, they'll say, oh, I see these jugs on the wall, and they're all these different colors, or whatever. So that they're sort of putting it in there so that it's not as distracting as descriptive video. Which is a great program. It's fairly new. They've been working on it for some time, and again, it's getting the money to create these things so that people can, of all different, if you're sitting there with friends, you don't want a descriptive video on because it'll annoy them. And it takes a while to get used to it anyway. So having it actually embedded is awesome. And so a lot of those programs are being worked on. The library does provide those descriptive videos. They also just provide books. They're the ones that do all the translation from regular print into all of the different formats. And one of the things that a lot of the books from CELA started off at the RNIB, which is the Royal National Institute for the Blind. That's UK. So they got a bunch of the books from there. Some are recorded here, but again, getting volunteers to come in and read those books, it's expensive to produce that. So you're limited to what you can get as far as that's concerned. So what the CNIB did was they partnered up with a company called Bookshare. Now, Bookshare is out of the United States, so it's basically the United States version of accessible media. Earlier this year, I got emails saying that the agreement was coming to an end, and I would have to pay for my own personal membership to Bookshare. The problem with that is, for a foreigner, it's pretty expensive, and on an individual basis, it's pretty expensive. Luckily, CELA was able to renegotiate the agreement and get it back on track, and so we still have access to these books. A lot of them also from Bookshare, it's all digital, so instead of having like a human reading the book, they have computers, because of course we have all of this great tech now that can read you just about anything. So the fact that we're relying on another country for that service, it would be great if we had the money here so that we could provide that ourselves. Plus, you get more Canadian content as well, which is huge. So, CELA is a fantastic thing, and I think probably one of the great selling points of the CNIB for people who are not blind, because they, I think, would relate to the fact that, you know, to access this stuff, there has to be funding. And another thing that happened a couple of years ago now, I think it was, it might have even been in 2015, when Justin Trudeau took over for as Prime Minister, he actually cut funding to CELA before he was told he couldn't, because that's where people get their government documents, so it's kind of necessary. But there was some funding that was still cut or moved around or something, so there's still problems there. So the governments don't see it as being important until they get told, and unfortunately that's the same with a lot of people. They don't understand how important those services are because they don't see how it's affecting people's lives. So something to keep in mind. Let's see here. And tech and high tech, that's my favorite part. Low tech would be considered like my cane. Another thing I have here is my handy dandy little magnifier. So it does have, yeah, okay, there goes the light. It does have a light on it, so, you know, dark restaurants, this is phenomenal. So if you want to pass it around and play with it, go for it. One of the high-tech things, and I love this, I have a desktop version of it. It's not quite as fancy as this one, but this is also a magnifier, but it's got text, so you can increase the font on it. I can't remember how high it goes, but it goes pretty high. But the other thing that I like about this one, as you can see, it's got, you know, in the picture there, but whenever you click it back like that, what I can do with this now is see things like up on the wall or, you know, out the door or whatever. So whenever it comes to reading train times on those big like sandwich board kind of deals, I can see it with this, which is really cool. So
And they used to
play
have
with
these
that.
big ones, remember the big massive newspaper reader that we had? back
I
in
still
town?
have mine. That's my
Yeah.
desktop version of that, and yeah, so I can read some of the letters and things that I get.
A bit bulkier than
Yeah, it's a little bit too much to carry around or travel with, but that one is just cool as anything. So that, the one is low tech, the other one is high tech, or considered high tech. And there's other things as well. I have a program on my computer called, let me see here, Zoom Tech Fusion. I have to think about these things because it just becomes automatic to me after a while. And the Zoom Tech Fusion program is really cool. It's sort of the hybrid of two other programs. The one is called Zoom Tech, and it just makes everything bigger on your computer without screwing with the pixels or anything, so it's still clear. The other one is Shark, which is for people who are completely blind, so it does audio for everything on your computer. The Fusion does a little bit of both. So whenever I was opening up my computer today, it started talking, as you might remember. We were trying to shut it up. And that's because as soon as I open my computer, that program comes up so that I can automatically use it. So that's like some of the software, which is also considered high tech. Then we have apps and things as well, and one of the things that some people are familiar with is VoiceOver on the iPhone or iPads or whatever, and that will read stuff on your phone or on your iPad or whatever. They have it on iOS as well, but, or not iOS, iOS is Apple, Android as well, but maybe I'm a little biased, but I prefer Apple. I've heard it's better. And it's really what I like to use. And so on my computer or on my phone, I use it constantly. If I need to find a place, if that's where I read a lot of my books, especially whenever I'm traveling, because it's just so handy. And all you do, like on mine, I have a shortcut. I hit the home button 3 times, and there I've got VoiceOver, and it'll.
What's it called? I missed that.
VoiceOver.
Oh, VoiceOver.
Yeah, and it's on every iPhone.
Oh, okay.
And then Android has one. Is it called Cortana? I don't remember.
Oh, Cortana?
Cortana?
That
Is
one's
that
on Windows.
okay?
It's just a VM.
Okay. Well, it's I don't know what the one on is. Android doesn't matter. matter because
Google Jams, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so, but yeah, they have them on almost everything. Unfortunately, we're not at Star Trek yet. You can't just say computer, do something and it does it, but you know, we're getting there, little by little. And so there's also other apps. I have some on my phone. One will read currencies for me and they keep adding new currencies to it. There are problems. It also sees colors apparently, but I was trying to get it to pick up whether a sweater was navy blue or black. It was navy blue, but it told me it was black, it was gray, and it was brown. It never did come up with navy blue, so so where the tech is coming, but it's not perfect yet. So yeah, but and all of those things, that's what the CNIB does. It shows you, it does the analysis so that you know what you need, and it gets you connected with those providers. And oftentimes there's funding because all of that stuff is grossly expensive. The program on my computer that reads to me, I think that one it's over $3,000 just for that. So hugely expensive, as much as the computer itself, really. And so they help you find funding so that you can get access to these things. A lot of the stuff, they will also teach you how to use it, which is huge too, because how do you know how to use these things unless you get some hands-on training? Because reading a book to figure out how to use the equipment you need to read the book, it's kind of not gonna work. So those are some of the great things. For me, the tech stuff, as much as tech hates me, and I hate tech, it's super handy to have, and it's making things so much easier and more accessible for people with various disabilities, not just the blind. Let's see here. Okay, so another volunteer.
Oh, volunteer. The world is moved along not only by the mighty shows of its heroes, but also by the aggregate of tiny pushes of each honest worker.
So everything that every one of you guys do, going out, knocking on doors and getting those donations, that is helping people like myself do hopefully great things in the world. So, and then I have one more. Any volunteers?
Life is either a great adventure or nothing.
Exactly. All of those are Helen Keller, who's probably one of the most famous of the blind people. Well, you know, there's others, mostly musicians, but Helen Keller was a great speaker, and she really did bring a lot of attention to the blind community. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, life should be adventure. We should be pushing ourselves to the next level every day. And and you guys are helping me do just that. So I wanted to thank you on behalf of myself and the rest of the blind community for everything that you're doing for us. It is greatly appreciated. Like I say, every donation helps. So, and finally, questions. And I will answer any questions, anything you want to know.
New York. You got one?
I had lots of things actually thrown out to say, but rather than just piling a whole bunch on you, I'll do maybe one or two, and if other people want to talk in after that.
How about her? I don't have to be anywhere till 7 o'clock tonight. And as you can tell, I like to talk.
The most recent thing I was thinking was, how about, like, since you mentioned Helen Keller, what resources are there with, like, CNIB and such to help with people who are both deaf and blind? Like, I have an aunt who is, and like, her husband is just deaf.
Mhm.
So it was really kind of neat to see how they interact and everything.
They do, I'm not sure all of the things that they do, but I know that there is a big deaf-blind community. The disease that I have is called retinitis pigmentosa, and there's actually a part of that that is also deaf-blind, because RP is like this big umbrella kind of diagnosis, but it's a lot of other types, and the deaf-blind is one of them. So I know that they have a lot of people who work in deaf-blind. With that, you're going to need to know Braille, and it's the CNIB that teaches Braille. You can gain access to it in other ways as well, but the CNIB is what's going to actually have you in the chair and learning it properly. Also, probably sign language, I would imagine, would be a big thing as well. And that would be like the touch sign language, which Helen Keller did, because she had to feel the hands to see what people were signing. And I believe they teach that through the CNIB as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what my uncle does with my aunt there.
Yeah.
Another thing as well, I know you're mentioning apps. I remember actually there was one I had seen a while back called Be My Eyes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thoughts on it?
I haven't used it, but I know others in the blind community have. And I believe that's the one where you can instantly call somebody and show them whatever it is you're trying to find or whatever. And that person can see through the camera what it is that you're trying to see, and they can then tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. I mean, that again, I keep being told I'm not allowed to bring up politics and things. However, I do believe in the democratization of the world, whether it's business or politics or anything else. And individuals being able to help each other out, I think, is huge, and that's what tech is bringing to us. The internet, every time people say bad things about the internet, it's like, yeah, okay, but there's so much good as well. I've met people from around the world that I first of all met them online and then actually went and met them in the places. The guy that took the picture of me with the knight in shining armor, I actually met him online, and we met in Poland, and I actually wound up staying with him for a few days, him and his family, which was great. It's just like minds being able to come together and to help each other out in that way, I think, is phenomenal. So the more the better, as far as I'm concerned. Anything else?
I think there was more, but I don't remember at the top of my head because I was going backwards through the slides and everything.
Anybody else? And don't raise your hands, just shout out because I can't see the hands.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to say you're absolutely an incredible human being, woman, and very powerful, and made me cry. So thank you for your story.
Thank you so much. You're gonna make me cry.
I have several questions. I'll sprinkle them out as other people think of things. My first question relates to the cane itself. So you have the red at the bottom. Does that indicate anything? I've seen online that there's some things with stripes and different things like that. What is the purpose of the color? And then I have a follow-up question as well.
Generally, it is actually to help us see.
Okay.
So whenever we have lower vision, what that does is whenever you're coming up to a curb or whatever, you can kind of gauge where it is because the red will stand out over anything else. They also, I have the white ball, I also have red balls. And that the white one is generally for summer, the red one is for winter because you can see the red on the snow better.
Okay.
So it's just an extra help.
And then just follow-up question to that, with using something like that, do you ever have to replace any parts? Does the handle get worn? Need to switch the balls out? Is it something that you just have and it's basically good, or what's the wear and tear with something like that?
I am highly unusual because I do a lot of walking. So I replace my ball probably, and this is like the high density, like ridiculously expensive ball because I do so much walking. And I change mine probably once a year.
Yep.
Before it was every couple of months. So yeah, that, and it's actually, if I can do it, let's see how strong I am today. Not very. But yeah, no, can you do it? No, it's just pull. I think it's harder that way. And the elastic, the way that it's like folding up nicely, that I have to actually replace on my cane now. Because it's getting a little thin. Okay, so you can see it has like a little hook on it.
Okay.
Elastic there.
Yeah.
Fancy.
And that's like, my dad did me this great favor once. He decided that he was going to do this like indestructible material on my cane tip. And unfortunately he sealed the hook.
Yeah.
So it was now like just a loop. So I had to get him to cut it off for me so that I could change it, because unfortunately his indestructible material only lasted maybe 6 months. So yeah, so there are different parts of it that do need replaced. Sometimes the tape at the top here, and that's sort of a rubbery grip tape, and anybody that wants to like try it out can. And that sometimes needs to be replaced as well. And then you'll feel on the side there's like a flat piece. That's where your finger goes to help you feel the ground. So
Okay.
yeah, and the loop on the top is just because. I like to call my cane Charlie, as in Cheeky Charlie, because it like falls all over the place.
Yeah.
It does all kinds of crazy things. So the loop just helps you keep it on your arm, so it's not like dropping in the middle of everywhere. So you always want to have that extra bit of material.
And for the cost of all just the replacement parts and fixing up and keeping it the way that you like it, do all those costs fall on you as the individual? Does CNIB help with any parts of it?
You get your initial cane from the CNIB. That's free, and then after that, I'm not sure. I have personally paid for my replacement parts. I think there are some people that get them paid for, but I'm not entirely sure. And that's through government grants and things as well. So there's multiple different ways that funding comes through. So yeah, it just depends on the individual and what programs they're entitled to for costing.
What was one of the least expected issues that you've had when you lost your sight?
I think for me, actually, I was told that I would lose peripheral vision. And whenever I thought peripheral vision, I was thinking out here. But for a couple of years before I was diagnosed, I actually started getting klutzy. What I didn't realize was that peripheral also means up and down. So it seems to me, in hindsight, that it was my lower peripheral that was affected first. So I was tripping over things and bumping into things, and I had no idea why. And I had been a gymnast back whenever I was a kid, so becoming klutzy was kind of like, what? So, and of course, you know, family and friends would say, oh, you're just not paying attention. So I started like really trying to pay attention to what I was doing. It didn't help a lot. But yeah, that I think was the most surprising, because yeah, you just, all of a sudden, you're tripping over things, you have no idea why, bumping into walls and stuff, and you're going like, what is wrong with me? And your mind goes crazy with what it could be. And then yeah, it turns out to be just blindness, which, okay, just blindness, but but blindness is something that you can cope with. It's much better than a brain tumor or something, so.
Yeah, with that, and also like with your cane, do you find that there's things that you would you wouldn't be able to find using your cane that you might accidentally, like with your upper peripheral vision, you might be able to something?
Well, I went out with a friend just before coming here, and actually the same day I got on the bus. And I got out of the car and went down like one side, and we were in sort of this park area, and got hit in the face with some like hanging, it was an evergreen tree that had like the pieces sort of hanging down, and I missed it because I was too busy looking down with my cane. And then I got a whole face full of evergreen. But things like that, yeah. And there are ways of combating it, and you are trained to like put your arm up whenever you're going through places like that. I just was a little discombobulated at the time because I had, you know, got to get to the bus station, got to do this, got to do that. So I wasn't doing the usual making sure that my face was protected. Luckily, it was just an evergreen, so it wasn't so bad.
And how does having a guide dog help?
Okay, so as I said before, first of all, you have to be cane trained and know how to get around with your cane first. What happens with by the time you're getting a guide dog, like you have to have that down, and you have to have a significant loss in vision so that you're not correcting the dog. So for a long time, I couldn't have gotten a guide dog because, well, and I still probably couldn't, because I may overcorrect the dog, which would undo the training. So you have to be profoundly blind before you get a guide dog, for starters. The guide dog, a lot of what it does, and I did actually do an interview with Guide Dogs Northern Ireland as well, which is part of the UK guide dogs training facilities and what have you. They have a huge program there that's really interesting. When you get a guide dog, for some people, it helps them feel more secure. So for older individuals that are maybe not as steady on their feet, a guide dog gives them almost like a confidence. And there's a lot of trust between you and the dog. There has to be. So you have to put your trust in that dog to make sure that it's not going to put you in harm's way. The benefits of having that dog is one, that feeling of a little bit more safety and a little bit more security. Also, the dog does what a cane does. It'll show you whereabouts you're going, and stop you from getting into troubled kind of areas like potholes and stuff that are, that you could bathe in. They'll steer you around that, which is great. Whereas your cane, you might pop into that hole and go, oh, what the heck is this? Like, how do I get around this? Might take a little bit longer. A guide dog will speed that up. There's a lot of different things. A guide dog is a great companion, of course, because the bond between man and beast is very close, especially whenever it comes to dogs. So they have a lot of that companionship. It also, for seniors in particular, I think benefit the most from a guide dog, simply because they have that companionship and they have a reason to get up out of the house and go for a walk, because you've got to walk that dog 2-3 times a day. So it gives them a reason to get out and about. Also, people, although you're not supposed to touch a guide dog whenever they're working, people will talk to you about the guide dog. So where a lot of people are hesitant to come up to somebody with a cane, they will come up to somebody with a guide dog. So there's a little bit more of a bridge to communication and to that community as well. So there's a lot of different benefits to having a guide dog.
Awesome. I just have a comment, not a question, on behalf of the Saskatoon office. So they said, we don't have any questions here, but we just wanted to thank Jillian on behalf of everyone in the Saskatoon office for taking the time to share your story, and we really appreciate it. So it's a huge thank you from everyone that is up there.
Thank you to Saskatoon for tuning in.
Just a quick time check, it is 12:45, we've got 15 more minutes. Just so everybody's aware.
Yep.
Is there any specific type of technology you would like to have come about to help?
Well, it's more in it's technology, but it's also, what would you call it? Well, it's gene editing through CRISPR. So what gene editing can do is, because RP is a genetic issue, what it can do is take out the defaulty gene, and then I'd be able to see again normally. So, but CRISPR is huge technology as well. So if we could get that down, that would be awesome. And for a lot of people, because a lot of blind illnesses are genetic in some way. So as soon as you can mess with that DNA, as scary as that is, because there's all kinds of other implications with that, that would be an awesome thing. So, yeah.
You wrote an article a while ago about the phobia that develops from being blind, where you're afraid to go outside and interact with the community. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? I think that's something you could probably use the door.
That is huge. A lot of people, and I suffered from this myself whenever things were, and occasionally still do, where as you start losing vision, there's a whole process that goes on. There is sort of a mourning period that happens continually if you have a degenerative disease, because every day you can lose a little bit of vision, or every month or whatever. So things that you took for granted just a couple of days before, all of a sudden you've got to figure out a new way of doing it. So there's that, and negotiating your environment, even in your own home. All of a sudden stuff gets moved around or whatever happens, and then you're feeling on the ground for things and you don't know. For people with RP, quite often we'll have good sight days and bad sight days. I overdid it last week, and this week my sight isn't doing so well. So I know this city, I grew up in this city, and I'm still having trouble negotiating it, because it's like, oh, is this here, is this, whatever, because it looks a little different. And that's the thing, is when people have got to figure things out anew every few days, every few weeks, months, whatever, there is that fear that happens as well, where a lot of people will kind of lock themselves in their houses because they don't want to go out and have to go through the embarrassment, for starters, because there's a lot of embarrassment. You know, you bump into a pole and go, oh, I'm sorry, and it's a pole, and everybody else that's around you knows it, but you don't. So there's that. You trip over things. There's all kinds of things that happen that can be quite embarrassing, and so people become afraid to go outside. They don't want to have to face that. And that just sort of feeds on itself. And it goes for anything, any kind of trauma. I have people who have had loss in their lives, and they experience the same thing. This COVID thing is also causing a lot of that as well. Whenever you get afraid to go out, and it starts to feed on itself, because first of all, you're being afraid for one reason, and then all of a sudden it gets that much harder to take the initiative and make yourself go out and do something. Sometimes just walking around the block is better than staying in your house, but for some people that's a real challenge because of, you know, whatever trauma has happened in their life that has made them afraid in the first place. So it's a big push to get people to take that first step, even if it's just sometimes out the front door and talk to a neighbor. That can be really, really tough for people, but once you start doing it, then all of a sudden you can push yourself to go around the block, and then all of a sudden you're traveling to Poland, you know. So yeah, but it is a really big thing, and it's hard for people, and where the CNIB comes in on that is they have those social things that, you know, if you can get together with a few other blind people and say, oh, I'm feeling like this today, that's huge. And with the lockdowns that we've had, the CNIB has had a lot of these kinds of community groups doing Zoom calls and things so that we're still able to communicate to each other. A friend of mine recently posted about having a thought for those people who, you know, right now everybody's feeling a little bit of what the blind community feels, in that it's hard to get out. It's hard to be around people. And the blind community is like that all the time. We're always battling that. We're always trying to find ways of connecting with each other. And human connection is so important for every human being. So having those Zoom calls where we can still get together and talk to each other and go, okay, you know, we're going into grocery stores. How do we find the right fruit? Because nobody likes it when you touch things, you know. And how does a blind person do anything? It's through touch, through hearing, you know. The little markers on the floors for what direction you're supposed to go to, they're not tactile, so we don't know which way we're supposed to go. Most people don't say anything to me. I don't know why. It's my nice face or something. But there are people that get grief for going the wrong way in stores, and it's like, can you not see I've got a cane? Like, what part of this are you not understanding? I can't see it, you know. And again, it causes a lot of embarrassment for people, and you know, you get one Karen, as they're called, telling you you're going the wrong direction, and that person, if they're a blind person, quite often will go, this was my first time out this month, and now I don't feel like going out again, because what if the next time somebody is just as harsh? And so you really have to have thick skin. A lot of people don't. Because you're already dealing with something that's pretty tough. And then, you know, you've got people schooling you on top of it. It's like, really? Is that necessary? Come on. What's really important here? And so, yeah, it's a big struggle, and the CNIB is doing what they can to get people to feel like they're still connected to community, that they can still get out, and giving them ideas and resources of, well, okay, so maybe you need to do this so that you can get out and do whatever it is that you want to do. So that's huge. And they also have volunteers that help you get out and about. So for shopping right now, if you can get a volunteer, and again, it's hard to get volunteers. It's hard to get, you know, enough staff to do the different things that need to be done. And of course, gas has to be paid for these volunteers. And, you know, there's different things that need to be paid for to get people to, the price of gas, let's face it, it's stupid. I don't know how bad it is right now, but it has been stupid in the past, and you know, so you're not going to ask somebody, one, to go and help me find groceries, and two, to pay for all the gas as well. So, you know, and that's something that the CNIB will do. They'll pay for the gas, they'll pay for taxi cabs, they'll pay for different things so that you can get to whatever you need to get to. Sometimes it's just somebody getting to a workshop at the CNIB once a month. That's their only human interaction, which is really harsh for people. As you can imagine, because I'm sure, I mean, you're all young here, so I'm sure that human interaction is huge for you guys. And there's a lot of people that just aren't getting it otherwise. So, and the less you get, the more afraid you get of the human interaction. So.
We do have one question from the Saskatoon office. So they just asked, do you know how long a guide dog is in service for?
I believe that it is 7 to 10 years, and then they get retired. Sometimes you can keep the guide dog, sometimes they're sent to another family, like a retirement family. They're never put down. Somebody said, like, do you put guide dogs in? No. No, they get to retire and have, live the life of Riley with some nice family. Sometimes the person that had the dog. And it depends on where you are. I mean, I can only speak for UK guide dogs. That's how they work it. Here in Canada it might be different. In other jurisdictions it may be different, but they're generally the same.
Yeah, UK said 5 to 7 years, and Alberta, BC, one of the guide dog places here, said they retire at the age of 10. So that's what I saw for variation online.
Yeah, and that's about right. And usually, like, if something happens to the dog where they get sick or something happens, then they're retired immediately and taken care of. Guide dogs are hugely expensive to train and raise. In the UK, they have a facility where they're bred, and then they're taken out to a couple of different training places. And then what they do is the person who's getting matched with the dog, and it takes a long time to find the right match because you've got to match the personality as well. So somebody who, like an older adult, isn't going to want, the crazy dog that likes to run all the time. But somebody who is young and loves to run is going to want a dog that's more active and more, wanting to, more adventurous, really, because the dog has to have that play drive that will make them want to do those things. So that's really important, is getting the right matches, which takes a long time. And then that person will go to, in the UK they send them to a hotel, and you stay in the hotel and train with your dog for 2 weeks, I believe it is. And then you go out into the community, and for the next 2 years you have a lot of in-depth training as well. I know in Edmonton a few years ago, whenever I was trying to find out information, they told me that you come once a week for training with your dog at their facility. It was a very strange kind of a way whenever you see like such an incredible program that they have in the UK, and ours was a little strange. And a lot of people tended to go out of the country down to the States to get guide dog training because the training here in Canada wasn't the best. So they'd go down to the States, stay there for 2 weeks, get the same kind of training that they were getting in the UK. So it's unfortunate. Again, we need to do better here in Canada, and that's where the funding comes in, and that's where, fresh minds looking at, the different ways of doing things and bringing it here is going to be super important.
Awesome.
I know, like, the lack of sunlight usually causes difficulties with mental health issues with people, and usually, like, sunlight is supposed to be, like, on the skin and stuff, but does having issues with vision and stuff from being blind, does that cause any mental health issues related to the sunlight?
Related to sunlight, not so much. Sunlight is kind of, at times it's your best friend, and at other times it's your worst enemy, depending on the type of eye disease that you have. For somebody who's totally blind, you can feel the sun, you can feel the heat of the sun, which is really great for mental health. Not ever feeling that, I would imagine, would have not good effects on somebody's psyche. But for people who are visually impaired, for example myself, if I go out into the sunlight from this relatively dark room, or you start opening those blinds, it's going to be painful for me, and I probably won't be able to see anything for 5 minutes. The same thing if I'm coming from like out there where it's nice and bright, coming into a darker place, I'm not going to be able to see anything for 5 minutes. So bright to dark really is a challenge. And again, that's where being able to use your cane or your dog is really important, because they're going to be able to negotiate those places that You know, you might be able to do it after 5 minutes, but that first 5 minutes can be rather embarrassing if you're standing there looking like an idiot because you're like, where am I and what's in front of me, and you know. So yeah, it's tough, but for different reasons, I suppose.
Does like the transition sunglasses kind of help with that?
Not horribly, no.
Okay.
They don't work fast enough, and you're still gonna go, the transition itself, like the retina isn't working properly, and the retina is the thing that picks up light. So that the slowness of the retina is what's the problem. So even if that transition of the lens, it's not gonna work in the same way as your retina does. So it might help, but I don't think significantly. I think it's just something we gotta live with, unfortunately.
Right, so we're nearing the end here. We probably have time for one more question.
Yeah, I'm just posting to them just in case there's any last burning thoughts or questions that people have.
Cool.
Anyone in this room have anything that they've just been wondering, wanting to ask?
And you can ask anything. I will answer any question. If you think it's embarrassing, don't worry. I'm not easily embarrassed. I lived with him for many years.
I was like, come on, hear a little more about the Northern Ireland disability.
Okay. Yeah, it's something I would love to bring here. There's actually a couple of programs I would love to bring to Canada, and I have been hitting brick walls. One of them is down in the States, actually. The guy is, and I was working with him about 3 or 4 years ago now, to bring self-defense for the blind to Canada, which I think would be a great program. I may be doing something with that in the Calgary school system next year, or whenever, you know, we're allowed to touch each other again, because that's kind of important when you're teaching self-defense. But that's a great program, because one of the things that they found is that self-defense brings the spatial awareness like nothing else. So if you know where you are in place and time, that is really helpful. Now the program with the Northern Ireland Disability, that whole corporate team building thing, some of the things that they do, like it's a lot of different sports, and the sports are phenomenal. There's a tennis player, and I mean, imagine a tennis player, one of the top tennis players is in Belfast, Northern Ireland right now. I think he's second in the world for blind tennis. And he's blind, he's profoundly blind. So there are ways of doing these things that would blow your mind. And so whenever they do that corporate team building thing, what they're doing is they're bringing that, the technology that allows people to do these things, they're having sighted people learn how to do that in like a team sport. So they're learning to rely on each other as disabled for a day people. You'll be doing, I don't know, wheelchair, basketball, something called, I think it's wiffle ball is the name of it. And it's one that blind people play because the ball makes noises. There's all sorts of different things, and they'll put people in wheelchairs or with glasses that will make you feel blind, or like have the senses of a blind person. They've got a lot of different types of glasses that you can put on so that you can experience different types of blindness. So they'll have one where it'll cut off your peripheral vision, that's sort of the RP thing. There's ones that'll be very blurry in the front, which is, you know, a lot of the different degenerative eye diseases. And there's ones where the central vision will be cut out, so that emulates other, I can't remember the name of it now, but so there's different ones that you'd be able to experience, and they've got, you know, various other ones where you can experience these different disabilities so that you can really get an idea of how hard it is, but also how to do different things. And you start to learn that as a group, as a team, you can do a lot. You just have to, I always say, it's my favorite thing that I like to just push at people all the time. Where there's a will, there's a way. If you have the will, you can find the way. And that's what that corporate team building really does, is it shows people who are fully sighted and fully able-bodied what you can do if you put your mind to it. And that's all it really is, in all parts of life. Whatever you have the will to do, you can do. You just have to figure it out.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to give you, just read out the final thank you from the people that are within our office, but just aren't lucky enough to be within the room. So they just said, we have no questions, but you've done a great job answering it. Just a huge, huge thank you for Jillian for coming in today to chat with us all. And I think from everyone in our room, let's give just one big final clap and just thank you very much for your time. Do you have any closing remarks that before I end off for their two groups that you want to say?
If you wanted to ask any other questions or anything, whatever comes to mind later, all of my links are at jillydavis.com. That's GILLYDAVIS.com. I'm on almost every different form of social media because apparently that's what has to be done these days. The email, it's the same, jillydavis.rp@gmail.com. So, and I'm totally open to, if you have any questions, any concerns, just get hold of me and I'll answer the best of my ability. You can friend me, you can follow me on Twitter, but it's very political, you probably don't want to. I'm conservative, so that makes it even worse. But again, like any questions at all comes back up, later on today or whatever, no problem. So, yeah, thank you for listening. And for everything that you're doing.
So much fire that you see CNIB now.
I'm hoping that that's right there.
Everyone this off.
Alrighty.
Perfect. Well, let's enjoy some awesome lunch. We'll help clean up in here and go for an awesome day, guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.